Well, welcome on this beautiful Tuesday in Winkler, Manitoba, and from wherever you're watching. Welcome to a special podcast, and I'm gonna want to give you the background as to why we're doing a podcast here today. And I have a very special guest who's going to join me in just a few moments. As some of you have been following the journey of my companion of 16 years, Stella. She's a purebred Maltese. She's been a part of my life for 16 years. And for all but the last couple of months, it's been a wonderful trip. She has given so much love to me and companion. I'm pretty sure that in all the years of trucking, I've done about 1,000,000 miles with her, and I have so many pictures and so many memories to share of different stops we made as she traveled with me in the truck for years. The last couple of years were a little hard on her as she aged. It's just like anybody else in our lives, in our human years, we're just not as agile. And so Stella was for the last few years staying home, had somebody to care for her, and she got good care. And but the last few months, her health has declined. This story starts really last fall when she started to have some walking, challenges and so forth. And even at that moment, last fall, I was encouraged by the vet, and no disrespect to the vet. Perhaps he was thinking about my needs. Maybe he understood me or thought he understood me better. And he suggested you're going to have to think about putting her down. So the topic of this discussion tonight is crossing your pet over. Is it time? When is it time? Is it your choice? Is it their choice? Is it a combination of the two of you coming together? But I was just last fall, I was determined that that wouldn't happen. And so I applied some of our all natural healing patches, LifeWave patches to her. And it was amazing the recovery she made. And tonight we're going to talk about natural processes. We're going to talk about natural healing. We're going to talk about what's good for our pets. But to bring you up to speed now, some of you would have seen my video of a few days ago. And thank you for the support. It wasn't there for me. It was to ask a question. How many of you have faced this difficult time? How many of you have come to the point of that intersection of crossing over? Is it your decision? Is it their decision? And tonight, I am pleased to bring a guest on the show with me. Her name is Brenda, and I want to bring her to the stage right now. And she's going to share some insights, because not only is she a pet owner, a pet lover, she is
I don't know what
also,
happened.
there you go, you're on. Welcome, Brenda. How are you?
Hi. I wasn't expecting this brick background here. Is that on
I
my
know.
end?
Well, that's okay. We know
Okay.
you're not in jail, and you're not up against the wall, and you're not just another brick in the wall. How many more
I
things
was
can you
just going to say. Yeah, that's great.
But so to the audience that's going to be watching this now and later, it was a difficult time for me a few months ago as I really entered into that critical decision. As I looked at Stella, what's best for her. I wanted to put her needs first. I wanted to put her first. I wanted to recognize the years that she's been with me, and she's also been blessed. She has blessed other people. There are people that are going to watch this and say, yeah, I remember when I cared for Stella for a period of time. A friend of mine, Megs, she had her for several weeks at a time while I was traveling. And she was just been a blessing to everybody. And so now I'm at that point, Brenda. I recognize all of what it's been. Tell me about what got you into this journey, because I think your journey goes back to 2016, as I was on your website just a few minutes ago, or maybe that's just when you started the website. But tell me from your perspective as a pet owner, what this looks like when you face this critical decision.
Well, so for me, I began working with animals. Would have been in very early 2013, because we had a dog of our own. Her name was Bella. She became paralyzed. And we were told at that time, there's nothing you can do for her short of sending her for surgery at, Saskatoon or Minneapolis. And we didn't have that kind of money. There was no guarantees. And so I always say there was, everything happens for a reason. And it was the second night that she was at the vet that I was outside with another dog of ours. And I just stood in my backyard and I looked up at the sky and I said, show me the way. Show me the way, because I don't know what I'm supposed to do, right? Because everybody has advice for you to say, oh, don't let her suffer, put her down, right? They all know, but yet in my heart, I knew that that wasn't right. And so when I came back inside the house, something told me to grab my iPad, and I did. And I opened up Safari, which is the internet. And there in front of me was www.NZymes.com, open to the paralysis page. And just watching the videos, listening to the stories, there were a lot of audio recordings, reading people's stories. It changed me, because it was like, there's hope. And that's where everything began for me, that if I can even help my little dog, and if I can help just one more person throughout going forward to not feel what I did, then this would have been worth it. And so that's now over. It's over a decade now that I've been doing this, all because of a little paralyzed dog. And now I work with everything from A to Z, right? Any health issues, anything, nothing scares me. And but in doing all of that, with trying to save the lives, there's also those times where it's too late. And sadly enough, we've been taught to believe that the only way to do this for these animals is to do it on the vet's advice. And when they say that we need to inject this, and I call it straight up poison. And that, I wasn't always this way, right? It's only been within the last year and a half that it's really changed for me, of going, this isn't right. This isn't right, because I've done everything right for them up until this point. And I learned last year, Cohen had a greyhound. We used to dog sit for him, and almost a year before, they had asked us if we would keep him, and he was Cohen's best friend. And so we took him in, and on June 20th of last year, when we came home from a meeting, he had lost his back end. And so knowing that he's like 11, 12 years old, he's a retired racer. His body has been through such a hard time already with all the hormones and everything they do to them at the track. I know, doing what I do, that when an old dog like that loses his back end, there's no coming back from it, right? And so that evening, talking to Daryl and knowing what we were up against, he's like, well, the call you have to make tomorrow. And that was just in the back of my mind going, yeah, I got to call the vet tomorrow. And long story short, out of all of that, had I called the vet out to come and cross Axel over, we would have made the biggest mistake, because 5 days later, Cohen had him running up and down our front street. That dog wasn't ready to die. So even though I had thought, based on what I've learned over these last 10 years, that when this happens, that's it, that's not it. And I wouldn't have known, right? I would never have known, had this not happened, to know that I would have made a big mistake. And before that, we used to always, when we would cross animals over, we would do it at home, because we usually have quite a few that, we have a pack, and every animal they've all got a relationship with each other. And so we would always cross them over at home, so that way the other animals would recognize that they're gone, because the hardest thing for them is mourning, waiting, right? Like I talk to people daily that, that's what is their issue with their dog, is that the dog is mourning. And so if they get to have that closure to recognize that their friend is gone, it makes it a lot easier. So
Brenda,
I always...
is it about, instead of condensing the final departure, the final say of a goodbyes to the pet to a matter of minutes, we're stretching it out over a period of time?
Yeah.
And that brings, you used a word that just spoke to my heart, closure, because that's what it's been for me. Like, I've been home for the last 3 weeks, partly because of Stella and partly because of other things, but I've really enjoyed this time to see her and to have that closure, to look at her and to remember her. I've taken so many pictures of her. I actually sent her out to the groomer today. I thought, well, who would do that in their right mind? Well, you know what? Dignity. You said it, my dear. You said it. This dog can die with dignity the way any one of us would like to. And off camera, we had a nice chat about advocating for our pet, about
Yeah.
not just submitting and taking what the vet would say. Bless their hearts. They're not pet owners, some of them. Some of them might be. But to be a pet owner, well, that's just a matter of the heart. We just can't, we have to advocate for the pet, right? As you say,
For
you have
sure.
to be involved in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if not, how can somebody else, like I had an incident a number of years ago with Bella, the little dog that was paralyzed, at a veterinary office that I didn't ever go to, and I shouldn't have gone, but you try to save a buck and not have to drive as far as I had to go to my regular vet. And that vet there tried to tell me that my dog was in a lot of pain. She was suffering. And trust me, I know my dog. She was not in pain. She was not suffering. And so, how does she have the right to tell me that my dog needs to, you shouldn't keep her going. She's in a lot of pain and suffering, when I know my dog? And I know she's not in pain and suffering. I think that that's now what irks me the most, is these people that have nothing to gain but to capitalize on our love for our pets are telling us when the right time is. And as I've learned now since last year with Axel, and he's not the only animal that this would have been, that we would have been crossing over, and they're still here. Right. So it's just, nobody is the better advocate for our animals than we ourselves, because we know them. Right. So somebody could say to you right now, oh, Stella, she's suffering. She's in a lot of pain.
Well, that is exactly what the presentation was in those few seconds. And I say seconds, they were already coming to all the wrong conclusions, I thought, and pressing me. I felt pressure to end this companion's life of 16 years. Like, that was more than I could handle. And I did what some people do. I said, no, I'm not making any decisions today. I will think about it. And that's when I reached out to you. And I'm glad I did, because you've been a big help to me. And I know you've helped a lot of people, because what a difficult place to be in. I'm faced with all the great memories, and I don't want to be guilted by somebody to say, oh, she's suffering. Really? Has she spoken that? Or are you just drawing your own conclusions? Because Stella right now, and what you gave me in natural form, in a drop that I can put in her mouth, has allowed the groomer today to have full access to her mouth where all the pain and infection is. And she trimmed her up nicely, and she looks all cute again. And I thought, if it's about managing pain, then let's do that.
Yeah, right? It's that simple. It's really that simple. And if we manage the pain, and say that tomorrow night she's like, you know what, I'm done, at least she's going to just go on up, and she's going to be free. She's not going to be in any pain, and you didn't have to make that choice. And I think that that's the hardest, right? Because if anything, for me, in all these years that I've been doing this, when I know that it's coming to the end times for my animals, I ask them, do it yourself. Right? Because I don't want to make that decision, because it hurts, right? It hurts waiting for that vet to show up, or to go to the vet knowing the inevitable is coming. And so thankfully I've had that. I've had those gifts of where my dogs have crossed themselves over. But before that, the guilt of knowing that I killed my dog, right? It's not the vet that did it, because you're the one that made the decision to do it. And how can you not see it any other way? And that's the way I see it. And now I don't have that guilt at all. It's like, now it's on their terms, right? It's not on my terms or the vet's terms. It literally is. It's on God's timeline. When he wants to take his creature home, that's when it'll happen.
And we want to draw parallels, and we want to put things in priority in that way. And the Bible recognizes us as just a little lower than the angels, and our pets are just a little lower than us in God's eyes. And I think God is watching it, in not in terms of every animal, but in terms of a pet. That's a special position in your life. Pets are just a blessing to so many of us. And I can actually name a few people that said, yeah, I regret I did it that way.
Yeah.
I wished I would have let it play itself out. We live in this environment that is urging us. We're traveling at a speed that is faster than our legs can be under us. Our bodies are ahead of ourselves. We're counting fence posts at 60 miles an hour, and we're losing count. And now you got a vet who in a matter of seconds comes in, says, blah, 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 got this, got that. Here's the best decision. Just like that.
Yeah.
So I put 16 years on this side and I put your professional opinion here. They don't weigh. They don't balance.
No. It's all the now world, right?
I had to get the pain under control because this dog, and again, you said something, you know your pet. I've watched Stella. She's a foodie. I'm a foodie. I love to eat. I love food. I like the taste of it. I like to explore it. It's a party in my mouth every time I taste good food. So here's my dog, forever and a day, a beggar at the table. She was from the very beginning. I didn't teach her that. She knew that. I could never get it out of her. I could never put her in that bed and say, stay there. Sometimes when I said, okay, then I'll give you some treat. But now she's there. And I thought, she still wants to eat, Brenda.
Yeah.
As hard as it is, now the pain is mounting. She's still eating. She's still doing her other bodily functions. Stella could have been already done a few weeks ago.
Right? Right? Yeah. And that's what I always say, because people, the biggest question I get asked is, when is it time? And I always say, when they stop eating and when they stop drinking. That's their way of communicating, saying, I'm done. And then, then after that, then it's usually only no more than about 2-3 days and they begin their journey over. But that's the big thing. If they're still eating and drinking and they still, they alert if, dad comes home or mom walks through the door, if you still see that life in them, to me, then so we have a dog right now. He's 14 years old. He's a dachshund. I got him when he was 4 years old. He had been paralyzed for a year. And I look at him with his age and everything and where he's at. We had an incident about 2 months ago where we thought maybe he was having a regression, and he hasn't had a regression at all in the 10 years, but he was having trouble walking. It was just for one day. And we all were like, oh, well, that's really too bad if Beanut's not going to get back on his feet again. But I was like, what would change? What would change if he now again were to become paralyzed? He sleeps all day because he's 14. He doesn't want to do much. He's still eating. He's still drinking. I bring him outside to express him because he can't do it all properly on his own. So just for his sake and my sake, I do it for him. What's going to change? Even if he were to become paralyzed again, which, now I have different tools that I would fight to bring him back again. But even if all that you have with Stella is that she's just sleeping, she's still there, right? And I would rather have my Beanut be still here, even if his back legs stop working, because I'm going to care for him until the end. And like I always say, I do until whatever that is going to be.
I wonder, we're living in such a perilous times. You and I, we advocate for many other things. We're concerned about our kids in the school system. We're concerned about, and your daughter is just a wonderful example. So blessed to have her on the show last Friday. But, in this culture of convenience and inconvenience, is a pet suddenly an inconvenience? Is your grandmother an inconvenience? Is someone lying in a hospital just a useless eater? Is Stella a useless eater compared to how she would run around and play and jump and be the pet? Am I to just discard her? Do I take her to the curb like that? I don't want her to suffer. Absolutely. Nobody wants any pet or any animal to suffer. But there are options. And that's why having you on here, to me, was a necessary thing. And for those of you listening, this is Brenda. She has her own website, website, which I'm going to put up later. But for pet health needs, Brenda doesn't have all the answers, but she's got some clues about how you can manage this situation. And I'm encouraging you, if you're at that juncture now, as I am, as Brenda has been, and many of you have faced that decision, contact her. She's actually put her cell number up here and her email, because she's been a great help to me. My goodness, let's talk about, though, how we get here, because we talked a little bit off air about vaccines and so forth. And dogs are also the owners, I don't want to say owners. We are What's a better word for pet owner? Give me a better word. I don't want to be the owner
Well,
of my pet.
yeah, I know, right? Because I always have a problem too saying that we're pet owners or you own that dog, because I don't think anybody should own any other living thing, right? But for me, it's more I'll use the, like you're her dad, you're the family, you're
And you know what? I
right.
did say that. Yeah, we talked. Go to mom. Go to they're part of the family. But anyway, as this four-legged creature that has occupied a part of my heart, I look back and I think I might have made some mistakes. I think we're
We all
looking
did.
back at vaccinations in general
Yeah.
and wondering, why did I do that? And did I do the right thing? And so now, some of the cases, like in my case, for her to travel with me internationally required, according to the vet,
Yeah.
those shots.
Rabies.
But
Yeah.
you know what? I took her on a number of trips just recently, crossing the border back and forth. Not once did they ask about that.
Yeah. They rarely do. They rarely do.
But still, we're taking a chance injecting these synthetic, whatever they are, into our little animals. Same as a concern to parents today in making choices about vaccinations for children. So, what do you say to pet lovers out there when it comes to the choice? I gotta get the dog's got to get shot. What do you say to them about that?
Well, the first thing is if vaccines worked, I wouldn't be as busy as I am. Right? Like
Well said.
this is my job, right? This is what I do. I talk to, sorry, I have a dog here that wants to
Yeah.
come and make an appearance. So
Bring him on. Oh, I remember him. I met him last week at your house.
yes, that's Nico. He's the dash down. He's the young
Welcome
guy.
to the call, Nico.
Right? But usually what were we just saying? He just
We're talking about the vaccinations and the need for them.
Yes, yes. And that for me, that I wouldn't be as busy as I am, if it wasn't trying to undo what the vaccines do. And the one thing that when people bring up vaccinations to me, I ask, like, where's the scientific evidence? Where's the scientific proof that indicates that animals need to be vaccinated? Yeah. Nobody can ever present it. Nobody can ever present it. But yet there's studies that have been done out there. I have one that I use often, that 69% of animals, and this isn't just like hypothetical, this is factual statistically, 69% of animals will develop some sort of a health issue from within moments of receiving that vaccination to all the way 6 months, 9 months, even a year later. Like, Carl, you would not believe how many times people call me about their dog that has allergies, which their animals shouldn't have allergies. And the first thing I always do is go, do you vaccinate? Well, yes, I vaccinate. I follow the protocol. Okay, so when did this begin? And it's incredible how you can link back the dog's illness, or vaccine-induced paralysis is a big one too. It's so big. And I mean, they're injecting it right in the back of the neck, right? So think about it. It's such a detrimental place. But it's something that it can wreck an animal's health, right? And so it always matches up, like, and people don't put two and two together. The other one is flea and heartworm meds, right? And as I said to you earlier, like, for me, when people ask me about flea and heartworm meds, why I don't use them, I always say, I'm going to give you a glass of insect repellent. Would you drink it? And of course, everybody says no. So that's where if you won't drink the poison, why do you expect me to feed it to my animals in a tasty, chewy treat? People don't realize that those flea and heartworm meds, it doesn't stop your animal from getting fleas and ticks. They have to still feed off the animal, which in turn then they can give them, the Lyme disease, auriculosis, any of the other tick-borne illnesses. It doesn't stop any of that. It only kills them after they've already been drinking the blood. So now if something is sucking your blood and it dies, what's in your blood? Right? So for me, that I go all natural, right? Even though at the big vet sign at the vet's office about saying garlic is toxic to dogs, I've been using a product called Bug Off Garlic for 10 years now on my dogs. And I have had 5 ticks on all of my dogs in 10 years now. And that's everybody else that I know that does the meds, they find ticks and whatnot all the time. So doing it naturally, yeah, that's what they used to use in the olden days, even for the horses. Right? Great grandpa used to feed the horses garlic because the flies would leave them alone. So,
And
it's
the
just,
vampires stay away too.
they do. They do, absolutely.
Ticks are
So,
bloodsuckers too. So there we go.
yeah, so I'm not a fan of anything at all that is Western medicine because
Mhm.
I've not seen anything good come of it. I mean, there can be, sure. Like, is that something people often ask me? They say, Brenda, do you ever go to the vet? Well, I do go to the vet if there's something very, very wrong, but then I want to know what it is and I'll take it
Mhm.
from here. Right. And that's because for me, I don't want to have that fear mongering of saying, oh, well, we better do blood work. It could be in the C word, the cancer.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, as much as that's being thrown around lately, like every day I hear from somebody that their dog's been diagnosed with cancer. I'm like, it doesn't sound like cancer. I mean, we just found one recently that it was salmonella poisoning from fresh pet food that they were feeding their dog. But yet it was
Yeah.
cancer in the vet clinic,
Yeah.
right?
Tainted
Like,
food. Yeah. Mhm.
and that to me is really sad because I think people are being so emotionally taken advantage of, and when you're scared, as we've come to learn in these last 4 years, fear makes people do absolutely ridiculous things, and when it comes to their animals, it's even more so.
What came to mind just now, Brenda, and what you guys are seeing there is brendascorner.enzymes.com. You want to go there. She talks about her family. The whole family is in on this, what you're doing, and I love it. But something you just said brought to mind. I remember when my father passed away, and things were just spinning. And when you're faced with the crisis, as you say, fear or any other crisis, things start spinning, and you don't even know what to do. I think the
Yeah,
important thing is, and I got this advice from my lawyer. He said, slow it down.
right,
Slow it down. Everybody's going to wait for you to make the choices and how this is going to play itself out and all the arrangements that have to be made. And I say, never, from my experience, Brenda, you can speak to it freely. Don't make a hasty choice in a moment when your emotions are running high. Slow it
right,
down, take it away, take yourself away, take your pet home, and give it thought and examine the further options that are there. That's the purpose of this call. We want to appeal to people to not be like some people who have deeply regretted what they've done.
right, right. And that's where we have to think rationally and not emotionally, right? And
Yes.
that's the hardest thing to do as pet people, is that we don't let our emotions. But look, if we let our emotions get in us and we're at that vet office and they're like, oh, he's suffering terribly, and you got to do the right thing, then what do? We think emotionally instead of rationally, right? So
Yeah, I felt
yeah,
guilty in that moment when I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And then there was actually nothing more. Like, it's like there was nothing else to say to me. And
yeah.
let's talk about the cost of euthanizing a dog. I had
Oh my
quotes of
goodness.
$395. I thought, what am I getting for that? And so I'm going to pay you to kill my dog, and I should feel good about that. I can't square it. It doesn't square in
Yeah.
my mind. And I'm so thankful for you and for the many other people that are behind you. I know you've got like a lot of supporters. I know I've spoken to a lot of people who said, yeah, Brenda helped me a lot. Yeah, thank God that we're making these choices, because I want to live as much as possible a regret-free life.
Right. Right. And the other thing too, Carl, that we kind of touched upon, I don't even know when it was, one of the last times we talked, was about when it does come time for our animal to cross over, don't be there crying and wailing and saying
Oh,
don't
yes.
go, and like being a wreck, because the last thing you want for your animal in their final moments is for them to hear you saying, like, what am I going to do without you, right? No, for us, when it comes for us, we encourage. We're like, go run, go be free, go run, right? Encourage them, be joyful for them. You save your tears for later, because I think about, if it was me laying in a bed somewhere and I'm dying, the last thing I want is my family around me bawling and wailing and sobbing and saying, don't
It
go,
makes it
because
hard for you to leave.
right. And that's the thing. Then you feel fear, right? And the animals, we don't want them to feel fear. We want them to know that, you know what, mom and dad are going to be okay. We're going to be okay. You go be free. And that's the most important thing you can do, because I never realized how hard that was for the animals. being that wailing, sobbing, please don't go, and why do we have to do this? That's not good for them, because think of what it would do for us in that place. That's not my last memory I want, and neither do they, right? So instead we put
And you know what? Go ahead. Yeah, finish that.
We're
We
just
put
going
our
to
what?
say that's where we put our feelings aside, and we think
Mm-hmm.
about them, and we make this occasion for them the most joyous it can be. That's the best final gift we can give them, not crying and asking
Yeah.
them not to go, right?
Again, the parallels need to be weighed and measured and be appropriate. So when we talk about the passing of a human being, a loved one there, and our furry loved ones, they wouldn't necessarily be on the same. But I have heard of some beautiful passings of people where the family sang them into heaven.
Yeah.
You gave me some beautiful music that was not only good for my dog, it was soothing for me, a certain frequency of
432
music.
frequency. Yeah.
432 frequency, yes. And I know Stella has had a number of good sleeps listening to that. I did. And I look at that and I say, this is now going to be easier knowing that, we took the time, the point where we've said our goodbyes has been stretched out, which we'd all like. And I'm looking at her today. And if she's still doing, as I said, what she's doing, and your pet, you listening out there, people, you may be right there and saying, well, I got a choice to make. Well, slow it down and think about what that's going to look like at the end, because that immediate choice you make could have huge consequences to
And
your
regrets.
conscience later.
Yes. Yeah. I know.
We don't
I would have. And that's the thing. I always, in the past, I think most of us who have had animals, we could all say we always regretted it, right? We always regretted, could I have done more? Should I have done more? And truly what I've learned, and like with this stuff that you've got, which in case people are wondering, it's a THC combo, and there's other things we can get to. I work with a medicine woman out of Ontario, and she makes a tincture. It's called Journey's End. And so it's kind of the same as exactly of what you've got there. It helps them to be more comfortable for that crossing over. But even if they don't, they've had the best sleep. I mean, look what you went through. Same as me, where it gave it, and it's like, hey, this is it. I know this is it. And you wake up the next morning, and there they are, and it's like,
their heads are bobbing like, and they jump off,
right?
they crawl off the couch, as Stella does. She makes her way to the kitchen. She's thirsty. She's gotten up even after the THC is administered, and I wake up. We've got pee pads out because she's beyond the point of now going outside to do her business. But she, in her state of being, and she still finds the mats. Yeah. She remembers where her water bowl is. She remembers how to get food for me. Wow, that's just showing up at the table. We feed her natural health foods and such. But gosh, it's been a journey here, and I'm really glad. It was hard when I began it, but I'm looking forward even to the end, and it'll come, but it'll come in her time. And I think that's right. Really important.
And you won't feel, as crazy as it sounds, you won't feel, sorry, I got to squirt a dog here. It's about to bark. Squirt bottle. Can you see? I don't even know if that shows. Best tool ever. It doesn't work. But then when that time comes, you're not going to have that intense sadness and sorrow because you didn't make that choice, right? And I always say there will be joy in my sorrow someday, right? And that's where I find the solace in it, of going, they did it on their own. God called his animal home. And how can I then? I can't. I mean, I've had animals now that have crossed over on their own, and I don't mean it to sound cold in any way, but I didn't even cry. How could I cry when they got the most beautiful gift here at home with their family? And it just, doing it this way, it changes something in your heart and your soul, that we aren't those complete and utter messes when it is the end, because we know that this is not, it's not something we controlled. And it feels better. And I don't know if that sounds weird, but it just, it feels better.
Yeah. Well, Again, Brenda, thank you so much for being here. And folks, there's brendascorner.enzymes.com. You can get a lot of information. This is her speaking on her own spot. She is involved with a company called NZymes, which is, give us a brief overture of that. What is NZymes all about?
Well, what NZymes is it's a pet nutrition company. Their headquarters in the US are based out of Las Vegas. And that's the stuff that back in 2012 that I found for Bella, right? My little dog that was paralyzed. And what it is it's living nutrition. So every single piece of this stuff is alive. So when you give the body life, incredible things begin to happen. And for me, I had a dog that everybody said that dog will never walk again. And they were right. She didn't walk, she ran, right? So
Yes.
it's giving the body that nutrition. And then after I started giving it to Bella, we had 2 seniors in our house, because any animal over the age of 7 is considered a senior. I had a dog and a cat, and they were both arthritic and cloudy eyes. And so I thought, well, if this can do this for Bella, what can it do for our Nico and our Gabby cat? And within days, they were chasing each other around in the house like they did when Nico was a puppy. And that's when I was like, you know what? Nobody can say that this is a placebo snake oil, because the animals don't know they're getting something different, right?
Yeah.
They don't know. So to see them responding that way is totally incredible. And that's when, for me, and it's on my website, I myself had been suffering with Lyme disease for 36 years when Bella became paralyzed. And so I was in a very, very bad place. Everything happens for a reason. And because of learning about these enzymes for the animals, come to find out that everything that the NZymes company has, whether it be for animals or for people, the only difference is the label on the bottles. One has animals, one has people. I started taking the enzymes too, not at all thinking that after everything I'd been through for 36 years and in and out of the hospital and the medical guinea pigging, somebody would have said years ago that, yeah, Brenda, taking 2 teaspoons of something is going to change your life, I would have said you're crazy. And yet here I am, right? And I'm completely clean of everything of my Lyme disease. And so everything I do, I learn from, right? Like we take in a lot of rescues. We take in the given up on animals, the ones that, the vets don't know what to do anymore. And to me, it's like, okay, yeah, send them to me. They come here to die. And instead they come here to live, right? Because I always say hit the reset button, right? Because diet is key. Feeding our animals a good species appropriate diet is the most important thing we can do. And I never used to do that. At the beginning, the first few years, I didn't know about good nutrition. And now it's night and day different. So what the NZymes company is a pet nutrition supplement. But then, like I said, everything they have is also for people too. So it's something I'm very passionate about, because I know had my Bella not become paralyzed, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation today.
And that's the part you say we learn from everything. We learn from everything. So encouraging you guys to go to brendascorner.enzymes.com. And then once again, for the last time, for your pet health needs, call her. Her phone number's on the screen. You can reach out to me on this podcast, wherever you've seen it. And I'm sure Brenda's going to be sharing it. Brenda, thank you so much for sharing your passion and your heart, and for, I think, giving people a lot of hope when they face that critical decision of when is it time to cross a pet over. Thank you so much for what you do. You've been a blessing to me, and I think a blessing to our audience. Thank you so much for being here. All right. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Have a good night, Carl.
Well, as I said, when I started Things That Matter again and started doing the podcast, I do want to talk about things that matter. And it really surprised me to want to do this call, because I didn't know I would be here. But once I was here, I recognized that there are going to be other people like myself, as Brenda spoke about, that are facing a critical decision. And our pets, they're very special to us. They certainly do matter. So I hope you've been blessed by this. And if you have any further information, want any more, contact me here or at the number that Brenda's provided, and we'll be glad to help you. And so this is Carl Krebs signing off, because you know what? Our pets, they matter a lot to us. God bless you wherever you are.